Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. It's the post-game pod from a big opening night win. Anthony Edwards goes for 41, including 2 clutch shots in the final minute and a half. An outstanding Ant performance, some notable rotation. We'll call them changes from departures from what we may have expected. It's all coming next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Thursday, everybody. It is a victory Thursday following the Timberwolves opening night win over the Portland Trail Blazers. This was a really fun game. Yes, it was ugly. Yes, it was sloppy. But it was also really fun. There was some high-level stuff happening, kind of middle stages of the game. Second quarter, part of the third quarter, kind of breakneck speed, both ends of the floor. Portland's crazy defense. The Wolves had some great defensive plays as well. And yes, there was some sloppy offense. There were too many free throws, ultimately. But there was a little while there where I was like, this is high level. This is really entertaining. And overall, it was just a really fun game. And, of course, the headline, the 41 points, the clutch shots. We'll talk about those down the stretch over a pair of really good defenders. Jeremy Grant's really good. Toumani Camara is one of the best 10, 12 defenders in the entire NBA. And Ant iced the game over him and nearly made him fall over with a step back on the left side. Just a fantastic finish to this game as well. And for as many issues as the Wolves had in close late situations last season, this was really refreshing to see. And so we'll dig into that. I also want to talk rotation. That's the other kind of headline here is what was different than maybe what we expected out of Chris Finch's rotation and who else played really well for the Wolves. We'll close today with studs and duds as we always do on the post-game pod. So a lot to get to. A big thank you off the top for making this show your first listen every day. Of course, you can listen to Locked On Wolves anywhere. It's free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. And, of course, also on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. All right, we got to start with Clutch Ant. And we'll get to the rotation. And if you're not familiar with the post-game pod, if you're new to the show, I'll give you my key takeaways off the top, the biggest storylines from the game. A lot of times that will fill a good chunk of the show, maybe hit some blow-by-blow and stuff down the stretch, some other things that stood out to me. And then we'll close with studs and duds. Typically the 3 best players and the 2 worst players for the Wolves, but I reserve the right to change that to more or less than 3 and more or less than 2 if I want to. But typically, and this is what I'll give you tonight, is 3 studs and 2 duds for the Wolves. The headline, of course, is Anthony Edwards. 41 points on 50% from the field, 50% from the line, and 100% from the free throw line. He was 14 of 28 shooting, 5 of 10 outside the arc, and 8 of 8 at the line. He had 7 rebounds. He only had 1 assist. He did have 4 turnovers, but Ant was phenomenal. He was the best player on the floor, and it wasn't close. And down the stretch, he was so good. I think he had 16 first quarter points. It was a little quieter in the middle stages. And then down the stretch, the shot he hit over Jeremy Grant at the top of the circle. They were down by 2 at the time. Ant hits him with a step back. Yeah, he put up the off arm, did not push off. It was a stumble backwards from Jeremy Grant, and it would have been absurd to call that a foul. Well, I'll maybe get to some officiating later. Also, if you're new to the show, I avoid talking about officiating as much as possible unless there's like a call here or there that's pivotal to the game. You're not going to hear me rant about officiating maybe 2 to 5 times this season. Over the course of an 82-game season, there will be a couple I can't help myself moments. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it in this game. It was not ideal, but I enjoyed watching them let the guys play down the stretch in this game, and that's what happened here. Ant hits the step back over Jeremy Grant, gives the Wolves a 1-point lead. On the other end, Portland, I don't think they scored on the other end. I'm going to look at the play-by-play and make sure that I have that right in my notes. Yeah, they did not after the step back. So Minnesota at this point, they were down 1. He hits the step back to put Minnesota up 2 in that moment, 114, 112. After TJ Shannon forces a turnover, Jaden McDaniels forces a turnover on Denny Avdia. TJ Shannon loses the ball and turns it over. The Blazers come down, miss a shot. So the Wolves are still up 2. And TJ Shannon, for whatever reason, decides to kind of force the issue, which he does often, but in this scenario, it would have been better to burn a little clock. He gets the rim, misses a tough reverse. Rudy gets the tip slam to put the Wolves up by 4 with 30 seconds left. Gobert fouls out on the other end, and Avdia makes both free throws. So now it's a 2-point game again with 7 seconds left, or with like 25 seconds left. But then with 7 left in the game, Ant hits Toumani Camara, all defensive second team this just last season, with a 20-foot step back on the left side. Kamara's on skates, almost falls over. Ant hits it. Wolves up 4 with 7 to play, and that's it. Just masterful shot making from Anthony Edwards. I'm always a little cautious with this sort of thing because a lot of times that's what this late game offense, not just the Wolves, it's kind of an epidemic across the NBA. It devolves into the hero ball step back threes and stuff. But look, if they're going to flatten out and give you a one-on-one, and you've got guys that are going to clog the paint and block shots, and the Wolves, and that inevitably that's what was happening. I don't hate the step back because Ant's such a good step back shooter anyway, and the mid-range hasn't been as good for him, but it was good in this game. And that was just like both of those shots were open shots because the step back was so filthy. Now, and then of course the counter to that is if guys are expecting the step back, you can draw them into the web and draw the foul. That's the classic SGA James Harden sort of a, you step back, you pump fake, and then you shoot it. And in the case of SGA and Harden, you flail and you draw the foul. I think Ant would actually legitimately shoot it and probably not get the foul call either. But just perfect from Anthony Edwards, perfect execution. And it's exactly why the primary reason why the mid-range shot is so important to have as a tool in your toolbox. You can go to it when you need it, late clock situations, shot clock, or end of quarter, end of game. And of course, also there's the floor balance thing, or really more of a bending of the defense so that they know, hey, he's not going to go to the rim or shoot a three. He doesn't only do those things. He can also pull up. But in this case, just masterful shot making from Anthony Edwards. Fantastic. We'll talk a little more about his game overall a little bit later in the show when we get to studs and duds. But that was my number one takeaway. It was just simply how dynamic Anthony Edwards was down the stretch. And in the first quarter, too, when the Wolves were struggling offensively, clearly some things he's been working on. We only got to see a couple of post possessions, which is, of course, something we'll be tracking given what he told everybody he worked on in the offseason and the success he had after working on his three-point shot all last offseason. Definitely going to be tracking that. There was a possession, I think what quarter was it? It was middle of the game where he backed into the paint and ended up getting a shot off and he missed it and then tipped his own miss in. And that's not going to go down as a score off a post up, but the post up created that opportunity because he backed himself down to 8 feet, missed a shot, and is athletic enough and has that second jump ability to get up and tip the shot in and create offense for himself off of his own offensive rebound and miss an offensive rebound. Like that to me, that's because of the post game. Some of that stuff was really intriguing and impressive for Anthony Edwards. I want to talk about the rotation, and I guess we could do that right now. Timberwolves, of course, it was announced on, or it was reported first on Thursday. I think it was Chris Haynes that reported on X that Dante DiVincenzo would start and Mike Conley would come off the bench. That's indeed what happened. But DiVincenzo really struggled in this game. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but the swarming defense from Portland really kind of threw him off kilter, and he had 6 turnovers to only 2 assists. He really struggled in the first half and then also in the third quarter, and then was taken out of the game, didn't see the floor again. So Dante played just 20 minutes, which was overall 8th of the 10 guys that played for Minnesota, was 8th in terms of total minutes played. So Dante started, but did not close. TJ Shannon closed this game. Terrence Shannon Jr. played 25 minutes, which was 5th on the Timberwolves. Scored 10 points on 7 shots, had 5 boards and 5 assists, was very good overall. We'll talk a little bit more about here in a minute, but he closed. It was the starters minus DiVincenzo plus Terrence Shannon Jr. The other notable rotation note is that Mike Conley played the least minutes among the top 9 rotation guys who played really the first 30 minutes of the game was those guys. The 10th guy in the rotation was not Rob Dillingham. It was not Jalen Clark because Jalen Clark was 8th in the rotation. It was Bones Highland who played 8 minutes at the end of the third quarter and into the fourth quarter and was really good, actually. The Bones minutes went extremely well. Or actually, I don't even think it was late third. I think it was all fourth quarter minutes. And Highland was good in this game. I thought his ability to somehow both be calm and frenetic at the same time, which I realize is basically impossible. But Bones Highland is a good enough ball handler and it can calm down an offense and can have a semblance of control while still being kind of all over the place. And if he gives the level of effort that he gave in this game and that he gave through most of the preseason, then the Timberwolves aren't going to have a problem using him as a 10th guy, depending on the opponent. And I do think this was more opponent specific than anything else. This was Portland's swarming defense creating havoc and 19 Timberwolves turnovers that Finch was like, all right, we need somebody that can handle the ball. I don't think I trust Rob Dillingham in this moment. We're going to give it to Bones Highland. And Bones played well. So the key rotation points, Dante starts but plays only 20 minutes. Conley plays just 13 off the bench. Jalen Clark is the 8th guy and fantastic defensively. And Bones Highland gets the 10th spot with 8 minutes played overall. Oh, and also the TJ Shannon closing piece is super important too. All that was really intriguing. And, probably on tomorrow's show, we'll unpack it a little bit more and try and decipher how much of this is matchup specific. But I do think that, like, Dante's obviously going to play more than 20 minutes a game. I don't think Bones Highland plays every night. Those would be the two things to me that are going to be most different depending on who the opponent is. I do want to get into the Wolves' struggles, ball handling against the Portland pressure, and what happened. Some of the counters the Timberwolves tried to get to counter, and how they tried to handle the press from Portland. And then we'll close today's show by getting into individual studs and duds. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Mint Mobile. If you're still paying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. You can just say yes to making the switch. You'll get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited text and talk delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number and contacts. You'll get the same quality service you're used to getting, but you'll get it for a fraction of the price at Mint. And perhaps best of all, the setup is extremely easy. You keep your number, and then you're running in minutes. Are you ready to say yes to say no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 per month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our friends at Rougiette. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve everything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress, I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rougier comes in. Rougier.com offers fast-acting doctor-prescribed treatments for ED, designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougier makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online with no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If you're prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit rugiet.com/LockedOnNBA to get 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com/LockedOnNBA. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNBA so that they know that we sent you. Rougier, stop making excuses and start making moves. All right. Let's talk about the hiccups in this game for Minnesota. We talked about the positives of how the Wolves closed the game. We talked about the intrigue of the rotation, the differences in the rotation from perhaps what we expected coming into game one. And again, it's game one. It could look completely different on Friday night against the Lakers, and it likely will. Remember the first 4 or 5 games last year, Joe Ingles was in the rotation, and he never was again in the regular rotation, right? Like, these things change rapidly. The other thing we have to talk about is how the Timberwolves handled, or really, frankly, failed to handle Portland's rotation, or excuse me, Portland's defense. Portland forced 19 Timberwolves turnovers in this game. Minnesota turned it over 19 times and only had 21 assists as a team. That is not good. It was, in fact, really bad. Now, of course, they didn't start a point guard. And I know that it was reported Dante DiVincenzo starting at point guard. Well, Dante DiVincenzo is not a point guard. I know he played a little bit of point guard for the Knicks. I get it. He's not a point guard. And at the same time, it's not panic time, because how many teams play like this? Obviously OKC, who's at another level. Portland, Indiana. It's less than 5 teams that are trapping and pressing and, have guys like Blake Wesley that are just like in your jersey messing with you. And I don't know why he didn't play more, honestly, because he gave the Wolves a lot of trouble. And yeah, I mean, like, DiVincenzo didn't handle it well. Mike Conley didn't handle it all that well either. He only had 1 turnover credited to him, but he had no assists and never looked comfortable. Was forced into a couple of bad twos that he normally wouldn't take because I think he was just kind of like, I'm going, like, I got past this guy. I should just throw up a shot before I turn it over. Like, that's kind of what it felt like. Ant struggled a little bit with the pressure early. The Timberwolves as a whole did. Like, there were just too many unforced errors. There was a weird inbounds pass from Dante DiVincenzo that went for a turnover early in the game. There was a weird inbounds pass by Jaden McDaniels late in the game in a crucial situation out of a timeout that led to a turnover. Silly mistakes from Minnesota on top of what was frankly just a really impressive Portland defense. And they're going to be a good defense. I think they're a top 10 defensive unit this year. And I actually, Mike Richmond from Locked On Blazers and I talked about this on Tuesday's show, that they're going to be a really good defensive team and that could carry them to the play-in. The more concerning, like, longer term, it underscores the issues of not having a point guard. And again, that's probably why Bones Highland played in this game, period. But then again, the Wolves closed without a point guard. They closed with no Mike Conley, no Dante DiVincenzo, no Bones on the floor. They closed with Anton Terrence Shannon Jr. And it was still the Portland Trailblazers, albeit with their closing lineup, which they weren't playing at the same frenetic pace. It's just different when it gets to crunch time. So I think that kind of proves both sides of this. Yes, the Wolves need to be better in pressure situations. You can't turn it over 19 times, and you just got to figure it out, right? But on the other hand, what Portland was doing wasn't completely sustainable throughout the game, and in crunch time, there's ways to overcome it. And you have personnel like Bones Highland for exactly this reason. We need 8 minutes of a guy that can calm the offense down, handle the ball, is a bit more dynamic than Mike Conley, is long, athletic, can compete defensively. If he's given us that compete level on the defensive end of the floor, we can play him. And that's why my takeaway from my primary takeaway from this game that's almost a little more concerning is that they gave up 114 points to the Portland Trailblazers. Ultimately, they only shot 40%, and the defense was obviously much better in the fourth quarter. 114 is actually not that bad of a number, but through 3 quarters, it was what? It was 90. Is my math correct here? I think it was 95 points through 3 quarters. Yeah, 95 points through 3 quarters. That's too much to Portland. And they ultimately only shot 40% from the field and 31% from 3. And it goes back to what Mike and I talked about on Tuesday's crossover episode. Minnesota did kind of dare Portland, like, hey, make jumpers. And Portland shot 42 threes. They made just 31%. The thing I was concerned about on that show on Tuesday, and I talked about a little on yesterday's show too, was the offensive rebounding for Portland. And guess what? The Wolves won the second chance points category. They only gave up 7 offensive rebounds to the Blazers. The Wolves had 10 themselves. So Minnesota ultimately overall was a +6 on the glass, which is really nice to see. And frankly, a little bit unexpected. And for as good as Portland's defense was, yes, they forced 19 Minnesota turnovers, and yes, they had 10 steals. Minnesota had 10 steals and 10 blocks in this game. The Timberwolves had 20 stocks as a team. Jaden McDaniels had 3 blocks. Jaden McDaniels also, by the way, might have ended Young Hansen's career before it even really started. Hansen played 5 minutes in the first quarter. He never saw the floor again. It was taken out of the game immediately after Jaden McDaniels absolutely just posterized him. So for whatever that's worth, hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully everybody wants to see Young Hansen play. But Jaden had 3 blocks. Randle had 2 steals. Jalen had 2 steals. Naz Reid had a pair of blocks. Dante had 4 total stocks. For as bad as he was offensively, DiVincenzo was very active defensively, and I thought was really good early in the game, especially on the defensive end of the floor. So handling the presses. Oh, I should also say another way the Wolves tried to kind of counter the pressure from the Blazers was there were a couple timeouts where they said, all right, Julius Randle is going to dribble the ball up the court because he's got Denny Avdia guarding him. And he's, probably the worst perimeter defender that's out there. Like Matisse Thybulle is a good defender for a big on the perimeter. Like they've got a lot of defenders. So what's the best way to avoid having one of these all-world defenders, perimeter defenders, hound our ball handler all the way up the floor? Well, we'll send the guy who can handle the ball but has a non-perimeter defender guarding him to bring it up the floor. And Randall's capable enough as a point forward that Avdia guarding him is not a big deal. So that's one way they tried to counter. And then the size and the physicality of Terrence Shannon Jr. and also just honestly the speed that he plays with. He goes so fast, it's hard to steal the ball from him because he's just like head and shoulders past you. There he goes. And Ant can play fast. He obviously has a burst, but Ant doesn't typically play fast in normal situations. Like he can blow by you with anybody, as good as anybody, but he's not necessarily going to play fast in a normal game situation like TJ Shannon might. And that's a pretty good counter for full court pressing, is just go past them. And that's what happened at the end of the game when he missed the tough reverse layup, but Gobert gets the dunk off the offensive rebound. Like that was effective for Minnesota. It won't, like I said earlier, it won't often be that big of an issue, but it underscores why Bones is on the roster and also the importance overall of having ball handlers to for some of these situations. One other quick rotation note, so I guess reversing a little bit, Jaylen Clark having a role is really intriguing, and it's hard to argue that he shouldn't. Like, I know he missed a couple open threes. He was kind of, flat offensively, but he had 3 assists to only 1 turnover. He had 2 steals in this game. Like he had 2 offensive rebounds. He's going to make his mark no matter what. And Jaylen Clark has to be a regular member of this rotation. And I credit Chris Finch for pushing the buttons and pulling the levers that he did in this game, which was playing DiVincenzo less, playing Bones Highland a little bit, playing TJ Shannon more. And we'll talk a bit about Naz here in a minute, but Naz didn't have a great game either. And I thought he made the right choices there with Naz Reid versus Rudy Gobert. And obviously Gobert ultimately fouled out, but I thought it was a well-coached game from Chris Finch and the Wolves staff. All right, let's close today's show by talking individual studs and duds. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Skims. When I found out that Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard a ton about their quality from friends and family, so I had to give them a try. Let me tell you, they live up to the hype. And transparently, our friends at Skims did send us, at least sent me, a couple of pairs of underwear, and they are fantastic and super comfortable. They, like I said, they definitely live up to the hype. I've always had issues with underwear. Who hasn't? I mean, it needs to fit well. It needs to be comfortable. Maybe you just want to find the right style for you. And Skims changed all that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. I tried the Skims Stretch 5-inch boxer brief. I don't work out a lot, but I do walk a lot. And they fit like workout underwear without feeling like workout underwear. It really will feel like you found the missing link when it comes to the underwear that you wear. They give you all the movement that you need for whatever it is you do on a daily basis, walking around, working out, whatever it is. Skims is the solution. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com. Let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select this show in the drop-down menu that follows. Again, Skims Men's at skims.com. All right, closing today with individual studs and duds. Not all that hard, although you could argue 4 guys for studs. We'll start with Ant, obviously. Anthony Edwards was phenomenal overall. 41 points on 28 shots. By the way, nobody else on the Wolves attempted more than 13 shots, and only 3 players attempted double-digit shots. No one else attempted more than 7 shots. So there were 7 guys for the Wolves that attempted 7 or fewer shots, and 3 guys that attempted 12 or more shots. And Ant had more than twice as many as the guy who attempted the second most shots. All that to say, Ant was great. 41 points on 14 of 28, 5 of 10 on threes, 8 of 8 on free throws, 7 rebounds, an assist, and a block in this game. He did have the 4 turnovers. He was a game high +9. And I thought the shot selection was extremely good. And the defense was really good. There were a couple of really impressive defensive possessions that just kind of occurred over the course of the game from Ant. And I was impressed with how locked in he was on that end of the floor in the season opener against a, let's face it, non-premium opponent. I like Portland. This wasn't a national TV game. There wasn't a superstar he was going against that is a household name. And Ant did lock in still defensively. So a really good all-around game from Anthony Edwards. Next up, Jaden McDaniels. We have not talked enough about Jaden. He was awesome in this game. And it's easy to miss it, but don't miss it. 18 points on 6 of 12. 3 of 4 on threes, including a massive left corner 3. I'm going to get the exact timestamp here of when this was. This was when Minnesota was down by 2. So I talked about the Ant 3 when they were down. This is right after Jeremy Grant hits a pair of free throws to put Portland up by 2 points with 2.5 minutes left. And Jaden hits a left corner three after Julius Randle loses his shoe, shovels the ball to him in the corner. McDaniels knocks down, I think that was after he lost his shoe. McDaniels knocks down the left corner three to put Minnesota up 1. After the Kamara free throws, that's when Anthony Edwards hits his step back over Jeremy Grant. But the McDaniels three was monstrous. If he misses that, they're down 2. The Blazers have the ball. Perhaps they end up going up 4. Perhaps they go up 5. And then who knows what happens from there. That's a huge shot from Jaden. But again, overall, just really good in this game. In addition to 18 points on 12 shots, he had 6 boards, 3 blocks, 2 assists, and a steal. And he was in a little bit of foul trouble in the third quarter. He stayed out of it early in the game when like Rudy was in foul trouble early. And it ended up suppressing his minutes just a little. He played just 29 minutes. But, I mean, man, 18, 6, 3, 2, and 1, like, that's a nice line from Jaden McDaniels. He did turn it over 3 times, but I like that he had the ball in his hands more. And I'm definitely at this point comfortable with Jaden McDaniels operating in the half court. And I mean, like, he's trying to turn into a legit third option. Like, obviously, that's not Mike Conley. It's not Rudy Gobert. It could be Dante DiVincenzo, given the scoring year he had with New York a couple years ago. But outside of Ant and Julius Randle, it's got to be Jaden McDaniels. And he played that part in this game. And then Julius Randle gets the other stud in this game, 19 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, plus 2 steals and a block for Julius Randle. No turnovers in 37 minutes. Really an impeccable performance. 19 points on 13 shots, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, and no turnovers, plus the 3 stocks for Julius Randle. It's hard to draw up a better, like, low usage version of a Julius Randle game. And he was great defensively. He walled up, forced some turnovers defensively. I forget who it was late in the game that he walled up on, and the refs had already decided we're done. We're sick of blowing these whistles. And it wasn't a foul either, but like in some games it could have been because who knows. But he walled up, was physical, and whoever had the ball for Portland turned it over. Minnesota got a fast break the other way. This was a near perfect Julius Randle performance on both ends of the floor. If I went to a fourth, I would say TJ Shannon. 10 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, knocked down both 3-point attempts, and he also had a steal. But really, the 5 points, 5 assists in 25 minutes from TJ Shannon was awesome. Duds for this game. Naz did not play well, especially in the first half. He had a brutal turnover shortly before halftime. It was the only turnover of the game, but he did not play well. He was active defensively, had a nice block late, but just wasn't a good Naz game. I thought the decision-making was off. He only squeezed the trigger 4 times in 20 minutes. And missed his only 3-point attempt. Just not a great performance. And then Dante, we talked about. The 4 stocks are great. The 6 turnovers hurt. And the 3 of 6, 1 of 3 outside the arc. Like, Minnesota started him expecting more than 7 points on 6 shots, and certainly not expecting the 6 turnovers. So not an ideal Dante game, not an ideal Naz game. But guess what? That's why you have a deep team, and that's why you have the best player in the floor in Anthony Edwards. Or that's how you win a game, is all of the above. It doesn't. Those guys aren't all going to play great every night. There's going to be ups and downs. And I'm sure Naz and Dante will both bounce back on Friday against the Lakers. Tomorrow's show, we'll get you ready for Wolves Lakers. We'll preview it toward the end of the show. We'll also hit probably some bigger picture, like, is this real? Is this not? Which seems silly after one game, but I want to pull out a couple of other takeaways I didn't get to spend as much time on today, and perhaps talk a little bit now that we know that DiVincenzo's apparently the starter. What do those Mike Conley minutes look like? What did they look like on opening night versus what were the best Conley lineups last year? How's Chris Finch going to handle staggering to try and get him on the floor with Rudy Gobert? We'll talk about that a little bit. So a lot to get to on Friday's show as well. And of course, the Wolves are at the Lakers Friday evening. That is, again, a 9 p.m. Central tip, and that will be on Prime Video, I believe nationally televised on, well, is it technically TV? Nationally streamed on against the Lakers in LA at 9:00 on Friday. That's all I got for you today. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And a reminder, not only do I cover this team on this show every day, Monday through Friday, but we also give you instant episodes after every single game. The all-new Locked On Wolves postcast is actually right here if you're watching on YouTube. It's on the Locked On Wolves YouTube channel, a new home for the postcast. Still primarily will be your favorites, host Luke Spinman and Luke Inman his Twitter handle, Spinman, and our X handle or whatever. And then also Jack Borman, the fantastic Jack Borman, formerly of Canis Hoopus, has done a great job with us at Lockdown the last couple of years. So those guys will go live. Short version, probably 15-minute show. That audio is the episode before this one in your audio feed. It's also the video before this one on YouTube. So you'll still get me daily, Monday through Friday. You'll get those guys on the postcast after every Timberwolves game going live on YouTube. So be sure to check that out, the Lockdown Wolves postcast. For your second listen, go check out the Lockdown Fantasy Basketball Show with our guy, Josh Lloyd. He hosts the #1 fantasy basketball podcast out there. We'll give you daily tips and help you win your league, all while making you a smarter NBA fan. You can find Lockdown Fantasy Basketball on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Lockdown Podcast Network, your team every day, just as this show is part of that very same Lockdown Network. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Lockdown Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.